What's up? I'm Tarek.
And I'm Justin from the Bluestones.
And you are listening to the Soundword Central podcast.
Hi, I'm Ben Province for SoundwordCentral.com. Released last year, the Bluestones' latest LP, Pretty Monster, features the single Don't Miss, which has more than 10 million streams across platforms. And this March, they released a remix of the song with help from the Bloody Beetroots. In 2022, the Windsor, Ontario, Canada duo spent time working with multiple producers, including multi-Grammy winner Joe Ciccarelli, whose overall credits include Frank Zappa, Ray Manzarek of The Doors, Glenn Frey, The White Stripes, The Killers, Alanis Morissette, The Strokes, and Spoon. Aiming to develop their sound further, the Bluestones also worked with Kevin Hissink, who has co-written and co-produced for pop superstars like Demi Lovato and Nicki Minaj, while other credits include Mike Shinoda of Linkin Park and Tom Morello, and they've worked with Drew Falk as well. Add to their story 2 Juno Award nominations and a song placement in an episode of Parks and Recreation, and it's safe to say the Bluestones have come a long way since forming. Joining me now here at Delmar Hall are frontman Tarek Jafar and drummer Justin Tessier. Gentlemen, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so that's quite a list, right?
Yeah,
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
Really star-studded.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk about, of course, the new record. I think when people first listen to you guys, they might think they have you pegged. They might be like, okay, they really like the Black Keys, they really like the White Stripes. But if you get deeper into the record, they're going to see more influences, pop elements. Isn't that right?
For sure. Yeah, I think that's kind of where we distance ourselves from those influential acts, is kind of through the versatility and the genre bending that we do on really all of our albums, and it's not like it's really purposefully done. It's just kind of done because we draw influence from so many different things.
Mm-hmm. And talk to me a little bit about the difference of working with multiple producers on this record as compared to just working with Paul Meany on the previous.
Yeah, I guess there's pros and cons to each. It was great to work with Paul, for the entirety of Hidden Gems, because there's like a cohesiveness that comes along with working with one producer, being in one studio, and knocking down an entire album, and I think you get more of what the production or the producer's sound is by doing that. He's kind of like the third member in the band on that album, right? And then you switch over to Pretty Monster, where majority of it was done with Joe Ciccarelli, but then we sort of had some production from Drew and from Kevin as well. And it's nice that you get a variety of sounds all on one album that still has a bit of cohesiveness. But I feel like in a way the recording process can be disjointed that way. So it was definitely something to get used to because it's new for us to do it that way. But at the end of the day, I still think we came out with a stellar album, and it's because of those 3 individuals.
Absolutely, yeah. No Angels. Talk to me a little bit about that song. I thought it was quite a departure from the blues rock sort of aesthetic you might be most known for. It reminded me a little bit of a Bruno Mars song.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. That's kind of both of our favorite songs.
It's one of my favorite, yeah.
Yeah, and it was one that, even in the demo stage was even more poppy than what the album version ended up being. And I think it's because when it made its way onto like the studio floor, we were like, okay, we want to make this a pop song because that's what its roots are, that's what its DNA is. But at the same time, like when we play, like how is this going to translate live, And we didn't want to have it sound too different from how we would perform it live. So that's when we sort of, injected more of the real raw, rocky sound that we normally do on our tracks into that song, and it sort of created this hybrid of pop and rock together.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and Camera Roll was another one that I saw heard pop influences, and it reminded me a little bit, almost bordering on Ed Sheeran.
Right. Yeah. I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you. Yeah. Same thing there. It's like we don't. Like when I write a song, that's a co-write that I did with Kevin, and that one started with like the sentiment, right, and then it's actually started out on piano, and I feel like all good songs, all great songs are written on piano, so it definitely translated into more of a pop sounding record, and that's one where we did try to preserve a little bit more, but the nice and the challenge of recording that song was to take what Kevin had originally had for drum samples on the demo and recreate that drum sample with like analog instruments, which is what like there's so many like there's literally we mic'd up a carpet and started to scratch the carpet to like catch some of the sampling that was done on the demo. Okay. And I think what ended up that doing was creating an even richer sound for that track once it did hit the album.
And Justin, take me through that process where you go from drum samples to your actual drums on the record.
Yeah, it's more just like, you know, trying to find really what we did for this album was we set up the drums for, you know, the songs that we just knew out of the gate were going to be like the rock songs, right? And then once we had that kind of set up, now we have the kit set up for the rest of the songs on the album. And then so now anything that was originally written with like drum samples in mind, we're just translating it onto that kit that we've already set up for a rock song, if that makes sense. And yeah, kind of like what Tarek's saying, it's just with a lot of samples, sometimes you know that they were made like in the box, which means like completely on a computer. And so it's got a 100% digital footprint to it. Not that that's a bad sound, it's just not something that we're trying to get after with what we're doing with the Bluestones. And so, yeah, we're just trying to like recreate, like he's saying, okay, we hear this, it was like a weird, like an ambient kind of static sort of like whirring sound. And so we recreated that by like putting a microphone, a really high quality microphone, turning it up really, really loud, and then softly scratching a carpet. So like it picks up those little things, and we mix that in with, you know, like a shaker that we find in the studio. And so we're recreating this sample that has this depth and warmth and richness that matches the rest of the instrumentation on the album, if that makes sense. Because we just feel like it's really easy, but it would be weird to just grab all these electronic samples on a song where the rest of the album is like all about warm, rich analog guitars, right?
Right,
So,
yeah, you're using it as a tool, not as a crutch.
got it.
And tell me about What's It Take to Be Happy. It references Billie Eilish.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody asked about that. I mean, yeah, it's kind of like that song is sort of like about freeing yourself from the expectations of others and kind of finding that happiness from within versus from what other people tell you. And for me, you know, like, it's not that I don't like Billie Eilish, and I think, you know, I always say that I think what she's done for young female pop singers is incredible. Like, she's kind of made it where, like, you don't have to, you know, sell yourself or sell your image or your body sometimes to be a famous pop singer. Like, she is just a representation of talent.
Right,
you know? She is. And kind of a new way of making pop records, which is, you know, that bedroom pop sound, right? All that being said, I don't know, I feel like the music, the music's fine. I just feel like the hype was insane for Billie Eilish, and I was just like, wow, I must not just understand this.
But we brought up Paul Meany a little bit, of course, from MuteMath, and I immediately got why you guys gravitated so much to him, because when people think about MuteMath, when I think about MuteMath, I think about the early stuff. And when most people think about MuteMath, they think about the later stuff. And I think that sort of applies to what you guys want the audience to take from your music. That I think I heard you say that if people want to see us as a blues rock band, cool. If they want to see us as a pop band, cool.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to us like how you see us, you know. We're going to keep making the music that we want to make. I think MuteMath, what struck me the most was their music is amazing. It's this awesome fusion of like insanely good rhythms and really good melodies, you know? And like that's what catches me the most about what they did. And also their live show was like some of the most amazing experiences that we've ever had as like showgoers. Okay. And if we can give people even an ounce of what we felt going to those shows, then we're doing a good job, you know? So they're influential both, you know, through their records and through their live show. That's kind of what we want to do.
Yeah. And one thing that comes up a lot in interviews with you guys is, you know, geographically, that you were from Windsor, but you're so close to Detroit that you sort of, and I wondered if that made you feel somewhat in between two worlds. wondering where you fit in music landscape and all of that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. Yeah, it's like, man, the other part about Windsor that's weird geographically is it's like on basically 3 sides it's surrounded by the states. So the only way to get into more of Canada, you just have to go northeast, right? It's northeast to Toronto. Every other direction is America. So it's kind of in a weird spot where even in the rest of Canada, a lot of people never find their way into Windsor because it's a little bit of a dead end. It's like the only reason why you're going there is probably if you're crossing into the States. So, culturally, it's a weird spot where we don't get much of Canada. And then Detroit's a huge city, so they don't really care about Windsor very much. So we have this very like one-sided relationship where we love Detroit and everyone from Windsor loves going to Detroit, but no one from Detroit ever comes over to Windsor. It's not reciprocated.
Okay.
So, we grow up with like American media, American radio, television, you name it, we consumed it. And so we definitely fell more in the Detroit side of the culture.
Yeah.
But, growing up, we played mostly in Canada.
Okay.
So it was a really weird situation for us. And yeah, I feel like that's why there's a lot of Americans that are like, I didn't even know you were Canadian. Because honestly, we barely are.
Yeah.
Okay.
To be completely honest, we barely are
Like
Canadian.
culturally ourselves,
Yeah.
we don't really do what most Canadians do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we watch more like football and baseball and basketball than we do hockey.
Okay.
Even though like we did play hockey and
Yeah.
we met on a hockey team and stuff, but yeah, it's just, I don't know. Yeah, it's a little more American.
And I'm trying to get my timeline right, but I thought I heard one of you say that you broke first in the U.S.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It was like as far as like radio popularity, even like shows were busier on the U.S. side.
Okay.
It felt like more of the buzz was hanging around in the United States, and once Black Holes broke through the U.S., especially like chart-wise on radio, that's when people in Canada started to be like, oh, hold on, like you guys are Canadian though.
Because that charted in Canada too.
Yeah, it did chart in both.
But I think the States first.
The States first.
Okay.
Yeah, the States first.
Yeah.
Okay. And then if you go back a little bit further, you had placements really before you considered yourselves a professional rock band, right?
Yeah, it was kind of weird. Like they would reach out in weird ways too. Like I'd be on Facebook and I'd get a message from Fox Sports to be like, "Hey, can we use your music?" And I'm like, "What? Like it's gotta be a scam." But it wasn't. Like I actually wanted to use
legit,
music.
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like there's 2 births to this band, kind of,
Good way of putting it, actually. Yeah.
because this started as 2 guys kind of hanging out, just graduated from university, right?
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, well, it wasn't even, we were still in university when we started. So, like 2010 was when we like first started playing shows under the Bluestones and like did a small EP, did all that on our own. And then 2018 is when we like re-released Black Holes as like, on a label and started really like hitting the road and just playing different level of shows. Before that it was always club shows that we just organized on our own, in Ontario mainly.
Was there one moment you can point to where it changed?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so it's kind of what you're saying. Like there's the whole sync thing was big. So we had a couple placements in the show Suits, and that led to a lot of people finding us on Spotify because the show has a very strong following for the music that is on the show. So we were added to a few playlists on Spotify that got us a lot of streams. Then that gave the Spotify algorithm enough data to feed other people the music in its algorithm. And then our manager found us through that. And then we started working with them, signed a record deal, got a booking agent, all that stuff. So kind of getting the placements in Suits was really big.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to ask you about your drumming influences.
Sure, yeah. I was thinking about this the other day, actually. John Bonham is a big one for me. Jimmy Chamberlain is huge for me. Darren King from MuteMath is a big one. And yeah, pretty much like those three, the sort of like the style and the energy that they all have. And there's like bits and pieces that I'd take from everyone.
Yeah.
That's kind of the big three ones for me.
What's your favorite Smashing Pumpkins song then?
Favorite Smashing Pumpkins song? I mean, a few, I'll just throw out a few that I really like. Back when I was a kid, Everlasting Gaze was like, I played that song on repeat. That one is on Machina.
Okay.
The first Machina. Okay. Yeah, that one is huge. Geek USA is like one of the best drum songs that I've ever heard. I mean, that album is amazing, Siamese Dream. But yeah, that's a really good one. And then like Tonight is just such class. That's one of those where it's like it is their biggest song and it probably is their best. It's very rare that happens with a band, and I think like that one for them is the case.
I feel that way about 1979.
Yeah, amazing song too. That was the first song I ever heard by Smashing Pumpkins. So.
Do you think Jimmy Chamberlain's kind of underrated?
I definitely think he is. And I say the same thing about Darren King. They're underrated because they are not always in the top 5, and they deserve to be, right? And like no one puts them in there, and they just easily are both top 5 drummers. So,
do you guys have a favorite song off Pretty Monster?
Oh, I mean, wow, that's tough.
For me, it might be No Angels.
Yeah, and if I were to have to go different to that, I'd probably say Healing.
Yeah, that's a great one too. Yeah.
The new remix.
Oh yeah, okay. The Bloody Beetroots remix. Yeah, that was really cool. I'm glad that came together for sure.
It's great.
That's kind of in listening to. I mean, Justin turned me on to Bloody Beetroots like years ago, and yeah, to have, to have him put its spin on Don't Miss, which is already a pretty hype song, and make it even more hype was crazy. yeah, it was crazy. It was a very cool. Very cool rendition of that song that got more energetic somehow.
And I'm glad someone did it because it was kind of asking for a remix, you know? Like it was so teed up that for him to do it was like great. Yeah.
And the Shaking Off the Rust video sort of predicted the whole From Home concert thing.
Yeah. It was funny, in March 2020, we got a lot of like video views because it didn't have like a viral moment, but it had a little bit of a bump because of everyone saying like, wow, this is crazy that they predicted this.
When I was watching it for the first time, when I was preparing for this, I was so surprised to look, this is from 2019.
Yeah. But it was like late 2019, it was only a few months before everything went down. And so it was kind of, it's good, perfect timing.
Well, thank you guys so much for doing this.
Thanks for having us.
The new record, Pretty Monster, is available now. For more on this band, you can check out thebluestonesmusic.com.